Good morning. This is retired Pastor Karl Schmidt from Calvary Lutheran Church, Low Lutheran Church in Amherst, New York. We welcome you to our service this morning. This is the October 5th of 2025, the 16th Sunday after the Feast of Holy Trinity. And the text that's appointed for today is from the Gospel of Luke, the 7th chapter, verses 11 through 17. It came to pass the day after that he went into a city called Nain, and many of his disciples went with him, and many people. Now when he came close to the gate of the city, there was a dead man carried out, and the only son of his mother, and she was a widow, and much of the people of the city were with her. And when Jesus saw her, he had compassion on her, and said to her, "Do not weep." And he came and touched the funeral mat, and they that carried the mat stood still. And he said, "Young man, I say unto you, arise." And the dead son of the mother sat up and began to speak, and he delivered him to his mother. And there came a fear on all of them, and they glorified God, saying that a great prophet has risen up among us, and that God has visited his people. And this rumor of him went forth throughout all Judea and throughout the region round about. Here's that portion of the text. And we're looking particularly this morning at verse 14. And he came and touched it says the bier. Well, that just simply means it's a woven mat that they carried the dead on. And those that carried the mat stood still, and he said, "Young man, I say unto you, arise." Look at that, simply one word, arise. Now, in the English, we can't really see much about this word. It looks to be like a command, which happens to be correct, but the reality of this word is kind of different, and it really matters today because it's also a word that each of us is going to hear and respond to. And so this is why this matters. Agerathe, it comes from agero in the Greek. Agerethete is it's going to sound weird, but it's a command or an imperative that is in the passive. It's like if I'm talking to a chair and I say dance, what's the chair going to do? Not dance. Why? Because chairs can't dance. They just sit there. They're a chair, right? And if you say to a dead person, get up, which is what agero means, get up, what's a dead person going to do? Nothing. Any more than if you command a chair to dance, it's not going to dance. If you talk to a dead person and say, get up, they're not going to get up. Why? Because they can't. But the way Jesus did this was even weirder. Because not only is it a command, an imperative, but it's in the passive. Because if you say to a chair, get up and dance, knowing that the chair can't get up and dance, but because Jesus put in the imperative, the expectation on his end is that it's going to, without any effort on its own part, get up and dance. It's passive. The chair will have no participation in the action. That's why the scripture, reading it in the Greek, is very different than the English. The English leaves out a ton. For every Greek verb, there are 6 parts. In English, we barely know if it's present or passive. I mean, present or past, or maybe future. Who knows? Could be all 3. In Greek, it tells us. And for this to be passive is weird because he knows that if he were to tell a chair, get up and dance, a chair can't get up and dance. He says to the body, this corpse, get up, knowing full well that the corpse can't, on its own, do anything. That's why I said this word matters. It matters to you. Why? Because you yourself are going to hear the same speaker speak this same word to you, and you may be nothing more than dust at this point, with the full expectation that you're going to get up. And that's the point of this. Jesus never expected the dead man this young son of his mother, to participate in getting up at all. The realization that he was being carried out on a funeral mat was obvious. It wasn't though they made mistakes and, oh, he's not dead. Oh, he's dead. And the Jews had a tradition of burying very quickly, which makes sense for health reasons. A lot of what God told the Jews to do was for health reasons. Of course, they didn't understand it back then, 2,000-3,000 years ago. But simply put, those were health regulations he wove into their traditions. So quick burial made sense. It still makes sense for health reasons, obviously. And so it's weird the way he says he commands a body, a corpse, to do something it cannot do. But he has the expectation that it's going to. He knows it's not going to, but he demands that it does. The corpse is passive, has no participation whatsoever. Just like when you're dead. What do the dead do? Well, nothing. They just slowly rot and turn back into dirt. If you were to, if they were bulldozing an area, let's say out in Arizona somewhere where there was an Indian tribe who lived there 1,000 or 1,500 years ago, and let's say they bulldozed right through an area where they happened to be buried, unless there were pottery shards there's no way to know, because 1,500-year-old bodies buried in the Arizona sand would be nothing but dust. Unrecognizable dust. Even the bones would be gone. It's just how it is in nature. So, these words we'll hear when we are dust, spoken by the same mouth, with the same expectation and result. Because, verse 15 of Luke 7, and he that was dead sat up. See how this works? He that was dead had no part in any of this. It's just that God happened to walk by that day and ordered him to get up. And when God orders even the dead, they do what they're told. Whether they've become dust and are blown in the winds to the four corners of the earth or not. Why? Because everything does what he tells it to. He told the plants to reproduce. You ever leave one part of your yard not tended to right quick? Like a garden that just didn't do much a year? So you let it go for a bit. What happens to it? Fills up with, maybe not tomatoes or beans, but it fills up. And unless you whack it down with a weed whacker or get in there with some sort of bladed instrument and chop it down, you got a small jungle. Because even weeds, even plants respond to God's voice and his commands. And it's not subject to faith. This is where a lot of unbelieving people think that, well, I don't believe. I'm not a Christian. I'm not even remotely religious. Okay, so what? Because when we're all dead, whatever we happen to be while we're alive isn't going to matter one little bit. When the boss of all walks past, the one to whom even plants respond to his voice and do precisely what they're ordered to do, then every person that ever lived is going to get up. Agero, when the voice of God speaks it. Faith means nothing here. And the dead will be gathered before him because now they'll be alive. And then he will separate. Separate who? Oh, that's easy. His children. His children from thugs, from thieves, from liars, from rats, from filth, from the walking trash that mock and denigrate and abuse everyone else around them. And they will be destroyed. But his children, hearing his voice, will be gathered to his side. In this case, Jesus gave this young man, and he that was dead sat up and began to speak, and he delivered him to his mother. Well, luckily they had a big funeral feast because I'm sure he was hungry. He'd been dead for a couple days. So they all went home and had not a funeral feast. They had just a plain old feast. And Jesus talks about when we're raised from the dead, we'll be hungry too. And we'll have to eat. And he's got a great feast prepared for us, for his family. That's the beauty of this. And that's why it matters to you, because when we can't help ourselves, I've sat over the years, I've been a pastor now for, active 35 years, emeritus for about 5 years. I've literally sat with hundreds of people dying and been there the moment many of them died. And what's the one common thing? It didn't matter how much money they had. You know what's really funny? Just like a nursing home. You don't know who was wealthy and who wasn't. You know why? Because by Friday of each week, no one is wearing their own sweaters, no one has their own teeth, no one has their own glasses, and no one has their own tissue box. Why? Well, because they don't know what's what, and they just start switching them around. That's why every Friday they gather all the teeth, all the glasses, all the sweaters, all the tissue boxes, and they sort them back out. Every nursing home in the world. Because all old people are the same. You don't know who the poor or the rich were, the brilliant or the really foolish. Why? Because everyone's sitting there drooling on their stainless steel tray. I can't tell you how many times I've been pinched, scratched, hit, and nearly bitten in nursing homes by old people who have absolutely no clue who they were. And this is just the way it is. And then we die. And that's it. We become corpses, come to a full stop, get very still. And by the way, that's kind of the definition of death. When everything is still, there's no pulse, there's no brainwaves, there's no breathing, there's no nothing. And then they call it. And they have a doctor determine the point and time of death. It's when you become very still and then begin to rot. That's what this is about. So it would seem hopeless, wouldn't it? It would seem absolutely hopeless at that point until the boss walks by. And the boss goes, "Hey, Karl," and you, even though you're dust, hear it. Why? Because he's reconstituted you. Like Job says, with these eyes, with these ears, with my own legs, I will get up and walk. In fact, anastasi, the Greek word for resurrection, means, again, istemi, to walk on these legs and feet. So even if you were hit by a 500-pound bomb in a war, you will still have brand new legs and feet. That is the literal word for resurrection in Scripture. That's why this isn't just a theoretical sermon about picayune Greek little details of the text from Luke chapter 7, verses 14 following. Why? Because every part of this matters to you. That's the really cool thing. That's why this, just one word, egero, of this text tells us everything. It's absolutely beautiful. So, that's, a lot more can be said about it, but we'll end it here because we've already reached 14 minutes and 39 seconds.